This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk, and I'm joined by my co-host, Casey Trujillo, who I believe has kept at least one pet alive for longer than 1 year. Is that true, Casey?
That is correct. Even though I accidentally ran over my cat twice, that cat is still alive in its 13th year and doing well. We have this love-hate relationship, so whenever I leave and I'm in a hurry, I need to shut the garage door. This cat, Bandit.
Bandit is the name of the cat. You didn't band the cat.
No, Bandit is just the name. Yeah. And so Bandit will know that I'm in a hurry. He can just sense it. And so he will run underneath the garage so it'll open the garage door again and be completely wide open. And he knows I'm in a hurry, so I can't go back and close my garage door. He just knows how to push my buttons. I get it because it was my fault. I ran him over. He can't use his tail anymore. But he still has that resentment towards me where he'll do cruel things like that. There's like 6 or 7 things that he does that he knows just gets under my skin.
Which is why you like the dog instead, right? So, or do you not like the dog either?
I don't love the dog either. That was for the kids.
That's so good. Casey, the reason I asked you that is because our guest today, from what I understand, has backyard chickens, which I'm impressed by. But we have Barth on, who is a staff marketing manager at Intuit. He's served in the Navy, and he's also the founder of Civilian Compass, which is an AI-powered tool to help match veterans with civilian work, which is really, really cool. And pumped to have him on the show. Lang, welcome to SaaS Therapy.
Yeah, happy to join you guys. I was thinking about like pets and what technically qualifies as a pet. Like, are the chickens pets? I don't.
What else would they be? I mean, they're pets with a job. I mean, if you have a service dog, they're still your pet, right?
That's a good point. I'd say they're family. No, but like one step further, we also got bees in the backyard. Are they pets?
What? Okay, I didn't know that.
I have thousands of pets?
You're like ready to live off the grid, man. That's
Dude,
crazy.
So when my wife and I came together, she's like biologist by trade. She's a teacher now. We had something come up where she said, "Why are you watching so much sports?" And I was like, it's the stories. Like you just like, you follow these guys the whole way and like, it's great. Like you should get into it. And I said, "Why do you have so many houseplants?" And so she had about 35 houseplants. We moved in together. And I'm like, meanwhile, some of these guys are dying. Like we got to take care of the ones we got. We're coming home with more houseplants. And my wife was like, "You just don't get it. Like they're like your buddies. They're always there. Like you get to watch them grow." And so I thought about it that night and I said, "How about this? I'll learn plants if you learn sports." And so we decided, like, let's give it a go. And she's way smarter than me. And so she knows sports like so well nowadays, which like a lot of positive externalities. And she's like at school and someone's like, she teaches some 6th graders and they'll say, "Oh, like, I think this is Josh Allen's year." And like my wife will chime in and be like, "I just don't think he's built for this stage. Like with that offensive line, like no way." And I'm like so proud. And at the same time, we have like 20 different fruit trees in the backyard. And it's a lot of fun with like having little kids. And right now it's peach season. So every day or so we go out and get another 10 or 15 peaches off the tree.
That's awesome. Like this is awesome. We came across you because you had this insightful post on LinkedIn that you actually have taken over customer education there at Intuit for the first time. And you're like, "Hey, I don't want to do vanity metrics. I want to know what other people are measuring." And, you got a lot of great comments. And then I commented on something, you reached out and said, "Hey, I want to have a conversation with you. And I know you've done this with other people." And then I started looking at your posts and like, you have posts around all sorts of things. And then people comment like, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you." And you go talk to them about it. Like, why was the first thing when you took over customer education? I don't think a lot of people would have done this, is went out and sought advice from others and got that feedback. Why was that your first initial decision to go do that? And I'm sure you did some other things, but why be vulnerable and make that post and ask for that information?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think I learned a couple of years ago that learning in public is fun. And the other is my default assumption with anything that I'm working on is I'm probably not doing it the perfect way, And so I have something in me that always just want to know, like, what does best in class look like for this particular project? And for me, I think like a lot of big companies like the model of, oh, we got this new project, let's hire an agency and figure it out. And that kind of drives me crazy sometimes because, like, sure, like they can help you or manage the thing, but like, I want to learn. I want to know what this looks like. I want to put tests into place. And from our conversation, from like that post alone, I think I probably talked to like 5 or 6 people in the last few weeks, and getting the diversity of perspectives for me and contextualizing it to our business, it just is really fun and it feels like powerful in that like there's so many different directions you can go. I think when you somewhat silo yourself to what's going on in your day job, one, it can become like a little bit boring, but two, you're just like not opening yourself up to the opportunities that could allow you to have a higher ceiling with whatever you're doing. I think with any given initiative, I think about floor and ceiling, in any given test. Is this a high floor test that we think is going to help out in X ways, but doesn't necessarily have a high ceiling? Or is it a no ceiling test? Might not work at all, but no floor, but super high ceiling. Like that's what I like leaning into is the upside, because you could test out 10 different things in a year, and if 8 of them fall flat on their face, but 2 of them do extraordinarily well, like that's enough to carry a portfolio.
I love that. One of the things I'm curious if our listeners, if our audience is willing to have those conversations with people. I'm curious from your perspective. The thing that I love about talking to other people is they oftentimes know stuff I don't. But I think the fear a lot of people have when they reach out to other folks is that like you're gonna come across people who have an agenda, and so as a result, they're hesitant to do that. But I'm one of those weird people who really like to take sales calls and listen to demos from other people, as an example, whether I'm in the market or not, which probably makes them hate me because I may not want to buy something from them. But like, what if somebody has the most amazing, cool idea, and that's something that I could apply and learn from and take with me? So how do you get past the fact that a lot of times you're going to talk to somebody and you realize they might have some insight or knowledge or idea that you don't have, but you also people don't always like going through the baggage of the fact that somebody else might have an agenda or a perspective that I may not agree with or may not find interest in, and I have to then somehow figure out how to get through that. How do you navigate that mucky part?
Yeah, I think like when I first realized like LinkedIn isn't like a scary, purely transactional space, and just started trying to put myself out there and like post once a week, I found that like the good ones are worth tolerating the bad ones, And I also find that when you can do your best to appear as authentically as possible, that other people respect that. And I think it's I still do hundreds of calls a year with people that have reached out about something or other, or I've reached out, and the amount that turn into like, all right, quick transition into like, this is why you need whatever, I would say is pretty minimal. And I think people somewhat get the read on like who you are, like what you do. And I think just being clear up front into like, hey, I'd really be interested in learning more about this type of thing. And exactly was what you were saying, that sometimes it is a sale. I've had that happen and ended up using software that someone had cold pitched me on. And so one step further, and I don't know if this will come off in a good or bad way, but I think sometimes when people reach out with like a not so targeted message, I will just like give advice back to say like, hey, I think I'm good right now. Like, just so you know, where I've seen like the most success on these is when you like reach out with like a high fidelity demo or something that's personalized to like the work that I'm working on. Like I'm a public enough person in the things that I'm sharing that they could get the breadcrumbs and figure out roughly what I'm doing and then look to provide value. But I think in some of the lazier outreaches, it's like I think I'll pass on this thing, but best of luck. I had one or 2 weeks ago where a guy reached out, and it seems to me there was a clear mismatch between what I'm doing with Civilian Compass and whatever automation technology he's using. But he reached out and said something along the lines of, I'm looking to acquire businesses with 3 to 30 million revenue recurring. Let me know if you would be interested in parting ways with Intuit. And it was just kind of like, all right, like there's a clear mix up here.
You should have told him you were going to sell Intuit to him, you know?
I know. And so that's what like a bunch of people end up saying. They're like, hey, you could pay for the kids' college. Someone said, you don't even pay for the college. You can buy the college. But like, I think things like that happen. And I think when in doubt, doing my best to assume positive intent. I think that's something my wife has helped me with a lot is like when someone cuts you off on the road, just like assume they're on their way to the hospital to give birth. Like it's not worth getting fired up about a little thing, you know?
It's awesome. Like my son is about ready to go on a 2-year church mission, and he's headed to Mexico. And my wife is just buying him everything imaginable. She's on these Facebook groups of missionaries that are in that area, and she's listening to all these moms, and so she's buying all this stuff. And it's been a little bit, but I served a church mission in Ecuador, and I'm like, honey, he's not going to need that, and he's not going to need that, and he's not going to need that, and he's not going to. And she's like, you don't know. And I'm like, the one person that probably does know is the person that's gone on one, not all these people that have never been on one, and they're suggesting things and they're saying things for their kids and all that. I bring that context. I love my wife. She's listening. Honey, you're doing awesome. Our kids are great. Like you talk to a lot of customers. So you're not just talking to fellow colleagues that are in the same area or what you're doing, but you talk to a ton of customers. I know there's a lot of people that have fear, whether they're in customer success, they're in customer education, even in product marketing, in people that develop the product, they actually don't want to talk to customers because they're like, well, what if the customer wants us to build something and they tell us what to build and that's not on our roadmap and we don't want to build it. And then they fill out down and then they're going to churn and then they're not going to be our customer anymore. We're going to lose all this revenue because I had this talk with this one. And they walk themselves through all this anxiety of what's going to happen without ever even talking to a customer. So you do this a ton. How do I overcome first the fear of talking to my customer and bringing up issues that they may or may not be happy about? And they're going to let us know. Like, how do you overcome that without the fear of like, I have to solve everyone's challenges. If they bring it up, I got to go solve it immediately. How do you do that? How have you put your mindset into something of like, hey, I'm always gathering information, and how do you put your customers at ease, yourself at ease? What's some best practices on just overcoming that first fear of reaching out?
Yeah, I think it's a multifaceted conversation. The first way I like to look at it is in most of these circumstances, you're reaching out to like a somewhat technical user. That's just like why businesses exist. So that's generally where like the fear stems from. Our customers are accountants, most of them like CPAs. And so I see a lot of people that are like, oh, like you just think about like stereotypes of accountants, or they're going to start talking to you with names of tax forms and whatever. I have found a pattern over time that the more perceived boring a role is, so it could be something in tech, someone's a developer, definitely accountants, I find the more thrilled they are to talk to you. And my hypothesis is because they probably aren't talking to their significant other and family about it. Like if you're a CPA, you probably don't get to like nerd out about your tech stack to like your wife. So with that, I want to be that guy, And so I think if you show yourself to be that person and be curious, and it's okay that you don't know everything, and you let them know, like, I'm not a CPA by trade. I talk to like hundreds of your peers each year. I think there's other angles to this. One is like there's this spectrum that we have customer conversations on. On one end is sales. It's very transactional. It's like if you went to the doctor and they said height, weight, gender, got it, here's your medicine. Like that's not helpful. You need to ask more questions. And there's a lot of like bias going on here. They're probably not being their full self in that. The other end is like talking to your software developers or your product managers. They're having the conversation from an angle of like, is my baby ugly? No one's going to tell you your baby's ugly, So like that's fraught with bias as well. So I try to live in the middle of the spectrum, and like from the get-go on a call, you jump in, you're trying to establish some sort of uncommon commonality. Where are they from? Understanding like where they are in seasonality as like a tax professional. That's huge for them. Understanding like, oh, how did your tax season go this year? Oh, you're headed into extension season. Oh, that's cool. Like you just try to connect on something on the front end. And then you very quickly disclose, I am not here to sell you in any way, shape, or form. Conversely, I hope you give me negative feedback today because that's how we're going to grow. Like I want that feedback. And I feel lucky being an Intuit that like we are, one of our core values is like customer obsession. And as a side note, like when I was talking to people about Intuit, when I was getting out of the Navy, the first few conversations in my head, I was like, these people feel a little bit culty. Like they're talking about customer values, like in conversations about the company. And I thought, like, what's up with that? And then I just started to realize, like, I think that's just a sign of good culture. Like the people just live it. And so Intuit cares a lot about what customers say and really encourage the negative feedback. From my angle, when you're going a step further, I like telling them, yep, uncommon commonality. I'm not trying to sell you anything today. I want to ask them a couple of quantitative questions on the front end because I believe our brains are just these pattern matching machines. And if you talk to a high enough sample size of customers, you want to ask enough quantitative questions about them on the front end to say, oh my God, this kind of reminds me of this person I talked to a couple months ago that was on this same competitor, or maybe they're a current customer, but they're dealing with the same problem, or similar firm structure. And once you have enough to put them in what I would call a soft box, saying like, this is what I kind of expect, I want to then ask them a few qualitative questions that are kind of open-ended about like their goals as a firm. What are they trying to do? Let them wax poetic because for me, it goes back to like the psychological principle, which I'm probably doing poor here right now, but like you want for psychological safety to have like each person talking 50% of the time. So once I encourage that and get them to answer some things, I just like diving into their world and like going into their workflow. I also tell them, based on the fact that I talk to so many of your peers per year, if you're okay with it, I'm going to call out positive habits and like room for growth areas throughout this conversation, just based on what I've seen. And good on accountants, I would say like 99% of the time, they're like, I'd love to see that. And they have a big growth mindset. And so frequently we get into like such a trust space that unknown unknowns pop up. Things that I didn't know that I didn't know. And that's generally where the implications from these calls arise. And I get to go into cross-functional point guard mode and work with my different teams to determine, could this be helpful to sales? Is this a marketing campaign? Is this something that needs to be added to the long-term roadmap? But I also find that when you get into that trust space, they will start asking questions about like, what do you think about the industry or the future of this, or how should I be doing whatever? And sometimes I have to say like, I'm going to wait until we're done recording on this call and I'll take off my Intuit hat and just give you my best advice from talking to a high sample size of folks. And frequently we'll end up talking for another 10 or 15 minutes and often stay in touch, whether they're our customers or not.
Man, there were some really good nuggets there, Lang. I think I want to dive down into just a couple of different areas that are fascinating to me about what you just shared. And the first one, maybe if we could, is when you say like you want to start with quantitative things, are you meaning something as simple as like some quantitative things I know about Lang, right? You own some chickens, you live in San Diego, you were in the military, right? And I'm just starting to form a picture about you as an individual, or is there something else more than just kind of like trying to create a persona and bucket that person into something when you think about that quantitative piece? So that's maybe my first question. I do have a follow-up as well, because I know Casey try to take me offline if I don't caveat that. But yeah, what do you mean by like starting with that quantitative picture for the person you're talking to?
I think it depends on what your business is, So like I do a lot of talking to veterans in my free time. And so that would be a lot closer to the former. I'm trying to understand their experience and what their interests are to help deduce how I can help them, From a job context and being a product marketer, it's definitely more of the latter. And sorry to hate on them, but like my villain in this scenario is Salesforce. It's not giving me what I need for this lead that is coming in or this current customer. It's disorganized. Generally, what I tell sales, I just build them an agent that says like, here's these 3 elements that Salesforce captures. What I'm saying is that it's like going to the doctor and getting the medicine too quickly. You need more information than that to have an intelligent conversation with them. And so I will have 3 to 6 follow-up questions that allow me to understand quickly, they fall into this sort of persona. And I think personas are important at like higher strategic levels because they allow us to almost be playing off the same sheet of music as our own teams and cross-functional peers. I think frequently it's more like mental models in my head of trying to say like, does this person fall into persona? Yes, but I want to think about an exact customer and recall back to that conversation and think like they remind me of this guy, Ricky, that I talked to last month. And these were some interesting things that came out with Ricky or things I didn't expect. And so I want to validate some of these hypotheses, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Meaning, you can tailor the experience in a conversation with the user. If you know more about them, then you can ask smarter questions later to uncover the meat of what you wanted to have. Maybe we can dig into that a little bit more in a second. But my follow-up question to your comment there was really one of the things that I think is interesting, depending on, like, let's say you're in marketing and you're trying to help sales with better messaging. Well, what if everything that you uncover is all product deficits? And right. And because you mentioned it's like, well, maybe that's stuff I need to give to the roadmap. But for you, like, one of the things that is a little bit challenging, I would guess, is there's things that you want to know from the customer that you know are that you can immediately act on in your sphere of influence. Whereas like, if all I'm hearing is a bunch of product feedback that says like this feature doesn't work, or you need to have this feature, and you don't have this feature, and you don't have this feature, well, I can go give that to the product team to go put on the roadmap, but I have no control over whether or not that actually has something happen, right? It's outside my sphere of direct influence. So like, what do you try to focus on your customer conversations, focus questions more that will help you uncover things that you can immediately act on versus just creating an open space for them to vent at you? Because you might end up hearing a bunch of stuff that, while valuable to the organization to know, you may not be in a direct place of influence to actually act on.
Great question. I think it depends on the type of customer conversation that you've set out for. Like if you're trying to get direct feedback on a feature, for instance, that's something. I prefer having a topic of interest that I'm trying to learn about. And I find question guides in market research are something that are funny for me because I work with a lot of market researchers, design researchers, and when you partner on, hey, we're going to do 30 customer conversations over the next 30 days and try to learn from this specific subsegment of customers about problem X. The market research folks are going to be like, brother, you got 3 minutes left on this call and you got 7 more questions to answer. And I sometimes get in wars about it. They're pretty cool. But like I frequently tell them, you will never remember a customer conversation because you got through all of the questions. You will remember the ones where you go super deep on one and uncover something unique where you're like, whoa, this is something I need to learn more about. And essentially go into what I call like N hacking. For N hacking, I essentially turn to like, hey, data analytics. Here's something that I just kind of found. I want to see if there's something that's more to this. What would be a proxy that we could use in the existing data that we have to see if this is a real thing? Product. Have you seen this sort of thing in your customer conversations? How about you, sales? How about you, customer support? And you try to deduce, is this a real thing or is this a one-off? I think it's a really fun space to be in. And to the last part of your question about like what you own and what you're able to influence, I think I got a problem on that front is that like, I know I don't own the stuff, but I want what's best for the customer. And so like when something comes up and it's outside of my sphere of influence, I'm still going to do my due diligence to say like, hey man, like this is an important thing. We should meet and talk about this, or Slack over a message to somebody and say like, this seems like there's something deeper to it. What I will say is that sometimes you're signing yourself up for work. And so you just have to think about like, how can I contextualize this insight and potential initiative into the language of the cross-functional person whom I'm hoping to influence to make some changes for there? And does it matter, you know? So sometimes there's just some intentionality around it, but it certainly is easy to get very excited about a thing and just say like, oh yeah, I'm ready to drive this thing. Like, let's make it better, you know?
Lang, I used to love this TV show that was on, and again, everybody has come out and said they did horrible things. So maybe I shouldn't admit that I love this TV show. And then people are going to be like, wait, you ran over your cat. This Casey's a horrible human being.
Casey's really good
after this.
He's great at undermining his own credibility. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. But I loved The Biggest Loser. So for those that never watched that TV show, right, they would bring in people that wanted to get healthy. You would watch these people go through the transformation, and in the last show, they would have this pre-picture of the individual, and then they'd lost all this weight, and you're like, it didn't even look like the same person. It's unbelievable, right? Lane, give our audience your best success story off of listening to a customer. Can you think of one? I'm sorry to get you, or just throw this at you right now, but is there one where you're like, that had such an impact in my life or at Intuit or a previous company that, man, I'm so glad we had that conversation. I want to give people the after vision of like, hey, you start doing this, you're going to have some amazing nuggets, success stories, just like Lang has had. So could you give something out there to the audience to say, hey, here's one that was just, it actually caused X.
Yeah, we were starting to see signals that we had like product market fit, like a little bit higher up market than we originally thought. So we worked with analytics, starting to see some different things and say like maybe we need to go a little deeper on this and see like if they are a fit. So got it. Lang jumps in. I'm going to do a bunch of customer conversations with these a little bit larger firms and figure things out. And so I ended up connecting with a guy. He was out of Arizona and his firm was doing things in like such an interesting way. For reference, these are all prospects, not our own customers. I just want to talk to other customers and see like what they think about why this would be a fit, why it wouldn't, why they'd consider us. And sometimes like you try to jump into like that trust bubble with the person and they're all in and you're just like, oh my God, I love this guy. And so I think we ended up talking for like 75 minutes or so. And he's on like our main competitor's software and told me plenty of like pieces of feedback that I could be like personally offended or whatever about our offering. But like, that's not what I'm there to do, you know? And so we walked through his workflow. We walked through like, here's room for improvement. Here's a thing that could help. And like, I don't want to have like the full Intuit hat on 1,000,000% of the time. Like I want them to know that I'm being authentic with them. And so I'll say like in these instances, I think it makes a lot of sense for you to be using something that we have. And in other instances, like here's something else that could help fill a gap that might be really helpful for a problem you guys have today. So we talked about family, we talked about sports and whatever. And so he's like, oh, can I like stay in touch with you? And I was like, yeah, for sure, man. And so I like gave him my email address and then down the road, he was like, oh, shoot me a text about whatever. We like the same football team. And so like, I just ended up becoming friends with the person. And I think maybe like 8 months down the road, he's like, hey, I'm going to switch to your software. I think it's like, da, 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 da. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool. But it's been fun to like see his firm grow. And it's fun making friends with these people because I had no hidden agenda. I did not care if he was coming. And that's probably bad to say. Probably shouldn't make that public. But like just trying to learn, about customers and prospects and the market as a whole. But nowadays, this person's like an awesome customer. We highlight them in like case studies and testimonials and trying to get them into like our customer advisory board and stuff. And so for me, it's like one conversation when you're just like leading with authenticity and curiosity, just hoping to learn more about these people can lead to some really great stuff because it also led to us down the road kind of shifting our focus to leading into a different customer cohort where we had a little better product market fit and that it was helpful for the business.
Man, that's a great story. I think it's the one thing that I love about your background and being in product marketing is that willingness to actually talk to customers. Since taking on customer ed, in my experience, a lot of customer ed people feel like they don't have the blessing of the organization to talk to customers. Maybe you have that benefit just because it's like you already have that kind of name and brand and trust within the organization that they're not afraid to put you in front of customers. What advice would you give to somebody who feels like the organization is afraid to put them on with a customer? And I know that like maybe there's the fact that I worded it that way at all. Like I'm sure there's a lot of people that's like, dude, if the org is afraid to put you in front of the customer, then like maybe you have a brand problem that you need to fix. Like you need to look internally and figure out why it is that people are afraid to put you on a phone with the customer. But like what are the things you think are, maybe a better way to ask that is, what do you think are good elements that will make it easier for like a person who owns a relationship with a customer, like a seller or a CSM, to actually put you on the phone with their customer and not be afraid to? Like, what are the things that you need to have that trust so someone else will not be a gatekeeper for you?
hmm I think it's more rare for an organization to say like, we don't want you talking to the customers. What I find is they're generally not supportive in facilitating it in many different ways. Because like you might say like, how the heck are you talking to like hundreds of customers each year? That sounds like a full-time job. There's a lot of different ways to do it. You can go to in-person conferences and talk to 50 different customers in a day. I went to my first like accounting conference and we were there to like film testimonials and all this stuff, but like it's not happening the whole time. So I went over to the booth, like see how sales talks to people, just talk to different people in the room. And I found moving forward that like there's a real beauty to just showing up in these conferences dressed as like an attendee and just talk to people. People love talking about their jobs. And so I just sit down at a lunch table with accountants and ask them about themselves, exactly what I would do on like a conversation, but you're talking with 8 to 10 people and they're nerding out on different parts of their workflow and their tech stack and how they go about like servicing clients. And I can go like 45 minutes before they ask me a question about myself, which is funny, but I'm learning like so much. And so it frequently happens in those venues and half hour, 40 minutes in, they'll say like, hey, like, that's really interesting. Like that thing you said, like, how are you doing it in your firm? And I'm like, oh no, I actually work for like the tax software. I'm just like trying to learn. And they're like, no way, we use your thing. Or hey, we do this. And it's just like a fun moment. I think the thing that most employees that are hoping to talk to more customers that say, oh, that's too much work. Those are the two primary hurdles that I see. One is a gap in technical background and you're scared about it. And that's okay. The only way you get better at it, it's like swimming. You're not going to get better at swimming by running. You just got to talk to them. You're going to learn, get a larger sample size, become better at it. The other is finding ways to make it organic to your work and getting like a buy-in by leadership, you know? And so an easy way to jump in is just by going to a conference and talking to people. Others are just by going to your leadership and saying, here's a huge problem that I see from a strategy lens today. I would love if I could set up a time to talk to 10 customers or prospects in this regard. And my rule of thumb generally with trying to learn from a large sample size of folks is that for every 3 customers I talk to, I want to talk to 7 prospects because there's a reason these folks are your customers. Like it's not that helpful to talk to only customers because you're going to be building for people that are already predisposed and understand your way of thinking. I think when you talk to a larger proportion and even double that amount of what you talk to customers, you understand what the market is like and what the true gaps are. And it helps to ensure that you're not being influenced by an echo chamber and that you're truly thinking about like what is best, not just for current state customers, but like from an acquisition lens, people that we could be bringing in, you know?
So Lang, I'm going to ask you this question and maybe you've already done this or maybe you're just thinking about it, but you've inherited or been asked to, because you are so passionate about the customer, to take over a little bit of the customer education program there into it. As you're going to reach out, I assume you're going to reach out to customers. What are maybe some questions you're going to ask? Because again, like Todd was saying, I know we have a lot of customer education professionals that listen to this podcast, and they don't necessarily talk a ton to their customers, whether they're not allowed, whether they're not sure what they would want to ask. What are maybe some of the things you're thinking about of asking your customers about or prospects around education, customer education? What are some things you're thinking about asking?
Yeah, I'm kind of early on in the education journey, so I don't want to like feign expertise. But what I will say is like the things that I'm kind of interested in is like, are we covering the right types of topics that could help people? And the quick follow to that is like, I'm a learner, you know? So like I like attending webinars and watching YouTube videos to learn things. And sometimes I don't pay perfect attention to everything that's going on. And so I'm kind of interested in like, what are the cool things that are going on in this space that can allow people to attend a virtual conference, a webinar, or even watch YouTube videos and kind of like select a certain part of them and like create a call project out of it. You know, like I'm interested in different ways to contextualize this information because like if you were to ask me about a webinar I attended like 3 months ago and be like, tell me what you learned. I'd be like, it was amazing and I don't really remember. But how cool would it be if you could like pull the transcripts from that thing and create like, hey, this is my like webinar or learning brain for a project, so that when there is a natural overlap of your current work or someone asks you a question about something they're working on, and you can directly reference, be like, oh yeah, the speaker was Suzanne, and Suzanne is like this incredible professional in the space, and here's how she went about it, and boom, you have a 2-page document to walk you through that thing. I feel like something like that, especially when you're working in these like technically complex spaces, could be really cool. And so the two things I'm trying to learn is like, are we hitting the right topic mix to bring the right folks that we want in the door? And two, on the back end, how are we meeting them where they are and giving them the tools for follow up and for learning that they'll be excited about and will think, I want to attend a future one because that seems like a cool topic that can help me in my day to day. And it's not just going to be a thing I see one time and think that was rad. It's more just like, I will truly be able to reference what I learned about.
I love that. So good. So basically, you're thinking of it in two ways, which is what are the gaps in the things that we're not providing? And then what are the tools and the capabilities and the approaches that we should be using to make it easier for you to actually achieve your end goal? After I've learned what that is, right? And I realize what the gaps are, what's the best medium to then convey that to you? That's so good. Dude, Lang,
Yeah.
this has been, oh, sorry. Did you have anything else you
No.
wanted to add?
I was just going to say, like, that's one of my favorite use cases of AI when I like create projects. Like, I think one of them is speed to first draft. So, like, providing a bunch of resources so that you can get to a first draft like hours before you would otherwise, and then use your human brain to play goalie and knock some of those things out of the way. But the one that I like the most probably is like thought partner. And so I create different cross functional thought partners as like projects or agents. And when I'm working on something, my brain is, I forget things all the time, you know? And so like, I'd love to have someone backing me up to say like, oh, but remember that thing you learned a little while back? Like maybe we should lean more into that model. So like, that's what makes work fun for me.
So good. Lang, this is one of the most, it's been such an insightful conversation. I've loved it. It's been really good. And hopefully our audience is immediately thinking to themselves, I just wish I could be better, right? This is therapy. We want people to think of a way that they can improve the way that they go about their work. And so at the end of every conversation that we have with someone, we always want to know what's one homework assignment that you would give our audience, right? Think about everything we've talked about today. If you can encourage people to take one action to be better, to do something different, what would you encourage our audience to do today?
Yeah, I'm going to pivot it out of a work lens. And I'm going to say from like a personal lens that I do a lot of work with veterans. It's hard. When you're getting out of the military, you're essentially like on this train track and then you leave and you're like in the open ocean. If you think back to people that like didn't serve in the military, when you're graduating from college or when you're in college, like you have a little bit of like a find yourself phase. You get to experiment and figure out like what's right and find your tribe. A lot of these folks like just didn't have that. Like I went to a service academy, boom, straight to a ship. You get out and like you're finding yourself at age 29, you know, which is a little bit different. What I would challenge people to do, I think it's always lovely and appreciated when people say like, oh, thank you for your service, whatever, like that's a nice thing to say. Sure. When you have friends that are getting out of the military, I think process of what they want to do next and honestly like mental health are really important factors. And so I would just encourage you to do what I call a Midwestern ask. I absolutely love people from the Midwest and they're like so kind and considerate and don't want to inconvenience you that I have a good friend, Josh. If I have an open spot on the couch, I'll say, oh, don't sit on the floor, come up to this spot. And he'll say, oh, no, I'm fine. No worries. Like he's got back problems, but like they just won't take you up on it. So you have to ask twice. And so you have to say, come up to this spot. Come on. And they'll say, okay. You know, they just don't want to inconvenience anyone. Veterans have a lot of that ethos and they are kind of taught not to ask for help, which is challenging. And so what I would just encourage people to do is like when you have friends that are in the military or getting out of the military or even like veterans, to kind of ask how things are going from like that work standpoint, if they're liking it, stuff like that, but then ask again. because I think you can have a first ask and say, oh yeah, it's good. I'm working at whatever. It's fine. But if you ask again, I think that like kind of opens the door. And for my journey back in like 2018, when I was still in the Navy, I was at like a July 4th barbecue. I had a Navy veteran ask me, like, you going to make it a career, stay in for a long time? And I was like, I'm not sure. He's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, probably not. It's just too much time out at sea. I want to have family. And he said, okay, well, like I was in for a few years, got out. Let me know if you ever want to get lunch and talk through it. And it was like a foreign concept to me. I had a conversation with him. It was amazing. We had lunch for like 2 hours and it really set me down a path of having hundreds of conversations to learn on the front end and nowadays to try to help others. So I think the big takeaway is ask twice, check it on your friends. You never know when it's going to be like real impactful.
Well, and how beautiful to think about your. I feel like all of a sudden that unlocked something for me as to why you do what you do, too, because it's a skill that you learn being genuinely interested in caring for other people. And maybe if you learn that skill in your personal life with your friends and with the people who you know are struggling, then you can apply that in so many other aspects of your life. So Lang, I love that. So good. Casey, any parting words for us, my friend?
I love how Lang took it from external to internal to personal. I mean, that was phenomenal. So thank you, Lang, for joining us today. And TK, thanks for putting on an amazing show as always. Appreciate it.
Lang, if people want to get a hold of you, look up Langley Barth on LinkedIn. Of course, he's active there and has great posts and great content. That's how we came across him originally. Any other thing people should know if they want to get in contact with you? It sounds like you're willing to talk. So
yeah, I'm open for business. I like helping other people. And so like I have the young kids, so I'm obviously like trying to do it all, but I'm always able to make time. And sometimes it'll be while I'm driving into work. Other times it's when I'm walking my dog, But yeah, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn if you'd ever want to chat or if you're a veteran that's trying to figure things out. I'm hoping to launch what I'm working on with Civilian Compass sometime next month into like a beta state. My entering hypothesis is I'm going to try to make it all free. I just want veterans to have a platform where they can use their inherent bias for action to search for a career that they think could be impactful for them.
Love that. So cool, man. Well, thanks again, Lang, and thanks to our listeners who are with us every week. We post new episodes every Wednesday. If it's your first time here, hopefully you liked this conversation. We do this every week. So follow us, subscribe to us, come back and listen, comment with us, connect with me and Casey on LinkedIn. We want to be available and chat with you as well. So thanks, everybody, and thanks again, Lang. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.